Yes, hello, hello. Good afternoon from London. And I see some people in the chat saying good morning. So, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session, all about creating charts that click on social media. Um, okay, so yes, as I said, hello, welcome. If you're just joining now, lots of people are letting us know where they're from in the chat, and we absolutely love to see that. But we are so excited for this session today. And first of all, I'm actually going to hand over to one of your hosts, Simona.
Thank you, Annie. And hi, everyone. My name is Simona. I am a content specialist at Flourish, and I'm so excited to be here today for our first webinar of the year. As you can see from the slide, I love all things Flourish. I love creating content with Flourish, writing about Flourish, trying to break Flourish, just so I can create the best things with Flourish possible. And yeah, hopefully this session is going to be very useful for you too. And handing back to Annie.
Hello. So I am Annie. I am the social media specialist here at Flourish, and I absolutely love telling stories, whether that's chatting away or telling data stories. But I am also your host for today. Okay, but I'm going to hand back over to Simona. Amazing. I'm going to hand back over to Simona to get this started.
Thank you so much. So we have so many things to cover today. So I'm not gonna talk too much over this slide, but just so you kind of like get an overview of what we will be doing today, we are obviously talking about how to create charts that click on social media. We're going to start with a couple of kind of like general questions about whether charts actually belong on social media and some basic data storytelling principles that are good kind of like a refresher as well, not only for charts that are going on socials, but also anywhere else on the web. And then we are actually going to start with a little bit of a demo. So today we're going to have the demo split in two parts. The first one is how we make charts social media ready in Flourish. So this is not going to be a traditional Flourish demo in the sense that we're going to start creating visualizations from scratch. So if this is the first time you're actually kind of like seeing the Flourish interface, stress not. We have multiple resources that will kind of like help you to get started with the very basics. But yeah, rather today we're kind of like going to reverse engineer things that are already done, but we're just gonna make them a bit more suitable for socials. And the second part of the demo is going to be led by Annie, who will show you how we really make things pop with Canva. So yeah, in the end, we are going to wrap up with a little bit of a giveaway. So today, one of you will have the chance to win a Canva Pro subscription for 12 months, because it's only fair that if we're showing Canva, if you're not familiar with Canva as well, you can kind of like get all the advantages from having a Pro subscription. So stay tuned by the end of the webinar to see how you can be the lucky winner. So yeah, getting started straight away with our first topic of the day, which is actually whether charts belong on social media. But before I reply to this question, I just wanted to remind everybody that as of April 2024, more than 5 billion people on the planet are actually active social media users. That means that more than 5 billion people have at least one social media profile on platforms like Facebook or Instagram, X, TikTok, etc. And all of those platforms have actually become the ultimate communication channel for businesses or content creators who are looking to build brand recognition and generally attract new audiences. And when we're thinking about social media, the massive reach that social media actually provides us makes it an ideal space for us to share content that actually grabs attention and delivers value instantly. And this is where data visualization actually shine. So to get back to our original question, yes, of course, charts and graphs definitely belong on social media, especially when they're done right. We'll share what done right actually entails during this webinar, but what's important to note for now is that data visualization can be a very powerful tool for storytelling, for engaging your audience, and simplifying complex information. And like, I know that this is a weird comparison, but when you think about it, data visualization and social media have actually a lot in common. Obviously, the main difference is that one of them is a tool and the other one is kind of like the stage where you're competing for attention. But in a nutshell, both aim to communicate information quickly and effectively. And at the heart of everything, anything you post on social media needs to grab attention in seconds, needs to explain things simply, and do it in a way that's visual and memorable. Because if you have just a piece of text or a bunch of kind of like, yeah, words, it's most likely that nobody is going to pay that much attention nowadays. We need something visual that kind of like grabs the attention and, yeah, generally performs better than plain text because people are drawn to visuals. It's simple as that. And another thing that's like quite important as well, which I don't think that a lot of people mention, is that another perk of sharing charts and graphs on social media is that they're universal. Visuals in general are universal because they go beyond language. If, let's say, for example, we have this chart here, even for a non-native English speaker, this chart will be much more understandable because it uses kind of like less text, it uses visuals, and you kind of get the idea of what this chart is trying to say, as opposed if you were just reading an article that kind of like essentially says the same thing, and it's quicker. And to sum up, both social media and data visualization actually share the same goals. They convey information quickly and efficiently, like that could be a tweet or a chart, but the goal is to communicate your message in the simplest and kind of like most digestible way possible. They aim to establish credibility and trust because if you are having a very good chart with a very reliable source, you could also be the source, but like generally, basically by sharing a chart, you say to your audience, I have done the work. Here is the evidence, see facts, see data. And what better way to establish credibility and trust by doing that? You can, of course, obviously engage and captivate audiences, which is something that we kind of like touched upon just in a second ago. But at the end of the day, when whatever we are posting on social media, it's all about grabbing the attention and actually keeping the people interested. And last but not least, very important is to repurpose existing content. Now, this one for me especially is a big deal because if we're honest, not every organization that has like different departments or different teams has like charts created by their social media team. Usually, the social media or marketing team takes charts and are working with materials from other teams or departments, or for example, like from reports. It could be articles embedded on your website, etc. But by using data visualizations, because they're so visual and they speak 1,000 words without actually having to write 1,000 words, those visualization can very easily be adapted and repurposed into like social media friendly content. And bluntly put, this actually makes everybody's lives easier in your company or organization. So yeah, hopefully that gives you enough kind of like motivation to start posting charts on social media. And now that we actually have covered the benefits of combining data visualization and socials, and before we dive into how to create charts specifically for social media, let's take a step back and just revisit the basic data storytelling principles in very quick kind of like 3-4 minutes. And if you've actually joined the previous Flourish webinar or you have engaged with our content, all of this that I'm going to be saying might feel familiar, but even if you know it, let it serve as a refresher, like a quick reminder of the new year about some good data storytelling principles. Because when it comes to creating good, memorable, and effective data-driven content, it all starts with one key question. And that question is, how do I tell a good data story? And usually the answer to that question comes by finding the hook. And a hook in data visualization is something that's basically worth reporting on. That could be a moment of change, that could be an interesting point, or an unexpected pattern in your data. And if we actually see an example here, you will see that we have this simple line chart. And in its current shape and form, it looks good, it looks great. But what's our hook here? Is it this kind of like spike here in this line? That's kind of like an unexpected moment of change, or maybe here, which kind of like shows us something that a pattern that we didn't project or like, yeah, didn't know it will happen. Or maybe this phrase here again. Well, the answer to this is all of them can be a hook. And if you are the one creating this chart, obviously you need to kind of like see what's the hook there, what is the story worth telling the world about, and basically repurpose your chart so it tells this story. And like just to emphasize that in itself, a hook is not a story. We need to add a narrative to make our point across and actually make people care about what we have to say. And why is that so important, especially in a social media context? We'll see in a second, but before that, let me just tell you like a couple of like very basic data storytelling principles that take just a couple of minutes after you have identified your hook, but actually make your chart or data project much better. If we take a look at the same chart, now that we have already identified our hooks or potential hooks, it's time to think about what we can do to add a narrative. And the things are quite simple. The first thing we can do, for example, is add an axis highlight. So, for example, we can highlight this period of time to provide some context of why this spike is here generally. Alternatively, we can add some annotations so that we have like, again, enough context to say, oh, I understand those unexpected points in time and like those patterns. Why are they happening? And yeah, we get like kind of like we explain the story. And last but not least, we add descriptive text. So you can see here that already by looking at this chart, I actually understand what I'm looking at. In comparison, if I just go back one slide, you could see that this was our original slide, which is fine. For example, if you're creating something for an internal presentation, again, that probably can work. Or like if your audience is like so in kind of like very familiar with the content that you're making. But especially when it comes to social media, where people, like need more context, or like they're being bombarded with so much different information all the time, having descriptive titles and subtitles is an absolute must. And yeah, you could see that from a very basic chart, we now have a data story. And the reason why, again, having data story is so important, especially in social media content, is because social media lacks interactivity. The charts that you will be uploading on social media are not interactive, so you need to find a way to kind of like go beyond that and bridge this gap while also obviously driving engagement and impact. And of course, you can have animated charts, like share these videos, etc., which is something that we saw on a previous slide. But again, these visuals are not interactive. Users cannot hover, they cannot zoom, they cannot explore the data on social media. They will have to go somewhere else to explore the data, which of course is fine. But again, like, yeah, we're trying to deliver as valuable content as possible within the social media platform. And that's why starting with the story, the facts, and the key message is more important than ever, because otherwise we're asking a bit too much from our users. We're asking them to like find the story themselves, spend a lot of time, like dwell time on our content, then engage with it, comment, share their opinion, share their thoughts. And in a realistically speaking, this most likely will not happen. However, if you deliver the story, if you kind of like tell them what are they looking at, the only thing that's left from them is to practically engage with our content. And to kind of finish on a more positive note for when it comes to social media charts, yes, they might not be interactive, which is something that we at Flourish value a lot, but they actually make up for it with quite a few things, such as creativity, flexibility, and fun. Because if you have all of those kind of like factors, the chances of your chart or your social media post becoming viral is much higher. And all of those kind of like creativity, flexibility, and fun is something that traditional outlets or data visualization tools, such as Flourish even, are not necessarily kind of like supporting at the moment in the shape and form that social media actually likes. So now Annie is going to tell us more about this and those benefits. So I'm going to hand over to her.
So, okay, thank you so much, Simona. And now it is my turn to just have a little bit of a chat about why charts need to be altered and be a bit different for social media. As Simona mentioned earlier, we need to work extra hard to grab people's attention. Feeds are very, very busy. People are bombarded a lot. So, how do we do that? How do we tell a good data story, like Simona was saying, on social media? Well, it is not quite as simple as you might think. So, this is an example from a blog we did recently. So, you can see that on the laptop, the chart is in our blog where we designed it for. And then on the phone, I've taken a screen recording of the chart and done nothing else except to make sure that the screen recording was a square so that it fit the platform we were putting it on. And it's not bad. It's still a great chart, but I think we can make it better. So here it is, a little bit bigger for you. And could you let me know in the chat what you think we could do to this chart to tell a better data story and also grab people's attention more? Just going to have a look in the chat now. Increase the font size, nice. Yep. Pictures, yep. Larger labels. Background color, interesting. Bigger heading, annotations. Oh my gosh, so many good ideas. Yep. Titles, subtitles. Showcase. Wow, okay. Oh my gosh, so many ideas, I can't keep up with them. But let's just have a little look at what I actually did to change this chart. So for our chart, I decided to put it into dark mode because I thought this helped the color highlights stand out a little bit more, drew a bit more attention to it in the feed. I also made all of the text bigger. This is not just the title, but also the axis ticks. And then I shrunk the chart down a little bit just to give it a bit more space to breathe on the page. And this is something I will say a lot. And then I added the storytelling title and reduced the amount of text that we needed to tell the story so that you could kind of understand it a bit simpler and a bit more at a glance. And then finally, I used a color highlight in the title to add some more storytelling context, where here the highlight matches the key information that we wanted our audience to take away. And yeah, this is what we changed in the post. So I hope you like it. Thank you guys for being nice in the comments. But a big element of improving this chart actually did happen outside of Flourish. Now, you might not know, but Flourish is actually a part of the Canva family, and Flourish and Canva are honestly a match made in heaven. And today we are going to show you a bit more about how you can use the Flourish integration in Canva and also just screen recordings of Flourish in Canva to create amazing, attention grabbing data stories for social. Um, but let's just talk a little bit more about telling stories on social. So there are many, many different ways that you can tell a story on social media. Um, None of them are wrong, none of them are right, they're just different. All of these examples today, by the way, are things that I've made in Flourish just because I was the one that made them. So if you have any questions, I can tell you why I made those decisions. Um, but as I said, there are many different ways you can tell a story on social media. So here in the top left, we've got a story about the stock market where I used the color of green to add some money connotations. Also used a little bit of imagery there with a little money emoji to help tell the story. Then we've got on the right there, we've got a chart which is a little bit more of a pop culture reference. So it's a Star Wars chart where I'm kind of referencing the font from the opening crawl. So hopefully, if you're a fan of Star Wars, you'd get that. You, thank you so much. You'd get that straight away. You'd get that reference. But I've also done something with shapes there where I'm talking about planets. And then my data points are actually in circles. So that helps with the story. And then at the bottom left, we've got a chart which is from the summer. So it's the Brat summer chart. But it's a very simple chart, but I've used some annotations there and also some references to the Brat with the colour. Um, and that sort of takes it from a simple line chart to a story. And then finally, in contrast to sort of the simplicity of the Brat chart, we have 100 years of elections data. And this actually uses animation to tell our story. So this is a screen recording that we put into Canva, and the animation simply changes how different states voted over time. So it's just the colors changing. But the change over time is that hook that drives our story. So yeah, and it's a simple post, but it's just something quite interesting to learn about. And one thing I think is important for us to touch on is, unfortunately, not every chart belongs on social media. Some charts are absolutely stunning and amazing, but unfortunately just won't translate that well onto a smaller screen or on a platform where you can't really interact with the charts to get more understanding, as Simona was saying earlier. But that being said, I'm going to run you through some of the things that you can do to ensure that your chart is still beautiful and engaging, but also easy to understand and suitable for social media. So let us dive into what a good chart on social media is. So, for a good chart on social media, you want to make sure that it's easy to read and it doesn't require a lot of zooming, a lot of scrolling about. You also want to make sure your labels and your text elements are decently sized. That's something you're going to have to change to make your chart suitable for socials. And then you also want to try and use, especially if you're a company like us, you want to use branded and distinctive colors to make your content recognizable on social media. And when considering how you want your chart to appear on socials, you also want to have a think about these things. You need to consider your storytelling. So, does your chart provide a clear insight or a takeaway at a glance? You want to have a think about whether your chart should be static or animated, and also how many slides should it take up. With the 100 years of American elections, we could have tried to do that on a bunch of different slides, but the animation actually really, really helped to tell that story. So that's something you want to consider. Then you need to have a think about the accessibility of your visualization. So, is it easy to understand for diverse audiences? And also, does it use clear text and have sufficient contrast for clarity? And then finally, are there any additional elements you can add to your chart to make it more understandable um, in a non interactive format? But what do I mean by these additional elements? Well, let me tell you. These additional elements are what we refer to as visual clues. So, visual clues are a great way to captivate your viewers with quick, concise, and compelling visuals. So, they're super good for grabbing attention on socials. For example, you could use images and stickers, which I think you guys referred to earlier. These are really good because they can help create emotional connections or have cultural references that will resonate with your audience. And that makes the data feel a lot more relatable. And they also just help break up the monotony and add a bit of personality and fun, which will help you grab attention in a crowded feed. You can also use highlights and annotations to help guide your story. These will draw attention to the most important insights, which will help your audience immediately grasp the key message without needing to give too much additional explanation. And again, they make your charts easier to understand at a glance, which is great for when you have audiences scrolling quickly on social media. And finally, you can make use of text and color to help reinforce your meaning. A strategic use of text and color helps to clarify your data's context and emphasizes trends or comparisons within your data that might otherwise be missed. And also, these help to add visual hierarchy, which is super important when with design, because that's what guides the viewer's eye to the most critical parts of the visualization. So that will help you to ensure the message is being conveyed effectively. And then one last thing to keep in mind as you're making your charts and adding your visual clues is to really try and keep it as simple as possible. So I've put this quote up here because it is something that is actually always on my mind whenever a social post isn't feeling quite right or the design isn't giving what I want it to give. I actually like to sit there and think, what elements can I remove from this and still have the same story come across really clearly and really well? And sort of just decluttering like that can often really help me make the story shine. Um, and that being said, it is really nearly time for us to dive into our demo. But first, I just want us to have a little bit of a think about what we're going to be creating. So, as Simona said, we're sort of reverse engineering some charts today. So, we've got a couple of ones we're going to show you. So, first of all, we have this lovely map. And let me see if I can just get it to play for you because this is an interactive chart in Flourish. There we go. So, what we're going to do to create this is we're going to add it as a screen recording so that we can keep the animation. Um, Also, as you can see, we have a legend on there, but it's not really telling us too much. So I think we want to add a custom legend in Canva so we have a bit more flexibility, and it can look a bit more how we want, whilst also giving some storytelling context. And then also we're going to tweak the text a little bit, change the heading so that it fits more into our sort of social media dimensions. We've been showing everything in a square. This is sort of our preferred format for Instagram. You can do them in different formats, but for the purposes of today, we've just done everything in a square to keep it simple. And then the next social we're going to be showing you is actually from a blog of ours that we put out recently. But in order to make this suitable for social media, we want to cut it down a little bit and really focus on what elements we need to make this super engaging at a glance. So in the blog post, we had lots of space to go through the text with scrolly telling, and we could quite easily fit in a radial tree chart right at the start of that video. But unfortunately for social media, Taylor Swift, who this chart is about, has a lot of songs, and so I felt that the radial tree was just a little bit too complex for us to understand on a smaller screen. So I had to make sure that all of my charts were suitable for social, and that helped me straight away to sort of minimize the complexity by just using the circle chart here. And then I wanted to have a think about what key pieces of information I needed to give my audience. So I'm finding the hook. So here I wanted to show how many albums she had, and then also highlight anything that was quite relevant to the tour or to the story. And for example, anyone here who isn't a Swiftie and might not know this, she actually released an album during the run of the tour. So this was a point of change, and it was a really good hook for our story. And then to minimize my use of text, all of this in the blog was in a scrolly, but for socials, we don't have that functionality. So instead of just dropping a screen recording of us running through that, where it could be a little bit boring, I decided to use annotations to call this out and sort of minimize the text to help that. But I've just told you a lot, so don't worry, we will run through that again as we sort of tweak the charts. But I'm going to hand back over to Simona now.
So a lot of screen sharing today, swapping screens, but bear with us. Okay, so this is the beginning of our demo. As Annie explained, we will be going through quite a few changes of a ready-made chart, two ready-made charts, one animated, one static. So you can see how we at Flourish kind of do things. And as you can see on my screen, if this is the first time that you see the Flourish interface, welcome. This is Flourish. But basically here we have a chart, exactly the same chart that Annie showed in just a second, which basically has this really cute time slider, which shows us how leaves are turning from green to brown across the states between the months of September and November. And in its current shape and form, this chart is great. We can always embed it on our website or do whatever we want with it. And if we're running kind of like a bit short on time, you can, of course, always just do a screen recording of that visualization, upload it in the correct aspect ratio, of course, upload it on whatever social media platform you have, and that's that. However, we at Flourish are a bit of perfectionists, and we are really kind of like convinced that paying a lot of attention to our social media posts actually pays off. So this is what we'll be showing you today. And the first thing I'll actually do is a very quick overview of what is happening right here on screen. Now, here we see that the export and publish button in Flourish is actually green, which indicates that this chart has been published already and most likely embedded somewhere, because obviously a huge percentage of our Flourish charts are actually being used for web embeds. So in order for me to not mess up anything by mistake, what I'll do is I'll actually just create a duplicate of this chart. And we're going to work from there. Now, again, we have this same visualization. Now, our title indicates that this is a copy. And again, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with how Flourish charts work, basically you have the preview. This is our editor with all of our settings that we can tweak. And we have our data tab. So this is the magic that powers our visualization. And as you can see here, we have quite a few columns, but basically in this column, we have the name of each US county. Here we have the state name, And here we have a couple of numerical columns that represent different dates, different values, which are actually bound here on the right under the setting called color by. And this actually allows us to create this beautiful kind of like time slider that you saw in like just a second ago. And basically, yeah, you can have numerical and categorical values, which depending on whether you have numbers or text, your visualization will use categorical or numerical colors. However, this is important a little bit to kind of like bring you back to what I did here, because you might notice that I'm actually having numbers in my data tab, although Flourish actually perceives them as text. And this is a manual adjustment I did here. So if I click on this ABC kind of like icon here, you will see that I am able to edit the data type in this column. So how Flourish sees it. Does it see it as a text, as date or time, or as number? And originally, Flourish will automatically assume that this is a number, a numerical column, because we have numbers here. But I don't need this right now for me to make this chart, because you will see here that basically whenever you have numerical values in your data tab, in your data set, Flourish automatically creates this kind of like linear gradient that shows us the gradual change between those two values. That's why the first thing we did here is actually change our data type to text. So then we can go under our regions layer and create this really cute autumnal color palette that basically is like so effective when the animation kind of like transitions. We have also used the custom overrides here, which is an additional setting that you can use to make sure that every single time a value appears in your time slider, the 0.01, for example, number is being represented by this specific shade. So this is kind of like just an extra security, so we are sure that like those values are always having the same color. And that's that. Apart from that, basically everything else that we have done to make this chart suitable for exporting and publishing is adding some text and adding some source. And of course, the time slider. The time slider here is being controlled under the control settings. So generally in Flourish, you can have like a normal filter that basically kind of like allows you to select specific date. You can have buttons, and you can have the time slider, which we need. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is our chart. But again, just a reminder, obviously we're creating a chart for social media. So there are a couple of things that we can do to make sure that our chart is as sleek as possible. The first thing, as Annie mentioned, is the legend. Now, although the data set is kind of like provided with these values that signify like no change in leaf fall versus a lot of change, kind of like leaves are already turning to brown, this doesn't necessarily tell us anything. And if I was creating this chart specifically for web, what I will do here is most probably I'll just replace those values here with something more meaningful, aka a categorical data. So for example, 0.01 would be something like no change at all. However, there is an easier way for me to do it right now because I'm creating a social media chart, and that's to actually turn the legend off completely. You'll see why in a second. The other thing that I am thinking about whenever I'm kind of like adjusting charts for social media is thinking about the fact that obviously under normal circumstances, we have interactive things such as the search bar, so you can kind of like search for states, etc. But on social media, even if this icon has been uploaded or like, yeah, it's part of our social media post, it means nothing because people cannot search. So I will just turn it off. I will do the same for the header and footer. You will see why in a second, but I know this is like against practically any data visualization best practice, but bear with me for a second, because to actually give you a bit more context of what I'm doing here right now is I am scraping the visualization of every unnecessary detail that then like I don't need in the video that I will be making of this chart, so that Annie has as much flexibility later on to actually create things, add things, adjust things as she wants to in Canva. So yeah, that's why we are kind of like scraping every single element that doesn't necessarily contribute to our story for social media specifically. And here is a little trick. So again, this is a bit unconventional, but as I said in the beginning, we like breaking Flourish. But basically, because again, the time slider is really effective when you're actually seeing this visualization live and you can play and pause, etc. On social media, you obviously cannot do that. What I'll do is I'll actually make every single thing but the text kind of like the same color as my background color, essentially to hide it. But before that, I'll just very quickly go here to slider width. I'll decrease the slider width to 1. Here in the general style, I'll actually increase the text size of the 13th of November at the moment to something like 1.8 and increase the label width a little bit. So like this. I'm going to move it in the middle. Bear with me. And then with the handle and the play pause buttons, I'll do exactly the same. I'll hide them like this. Why I'm doing this is because now I am the only person that knows that there is a button there, so I can play it and pause it as I want. But if I do that, if you just take a look at this visualization, it looks like I'm having a dynamic subtitle, which is kind of true right now that we hit every single additional element. And that's it. This is everything that I will be doing in Flourish for this specific chart. The last step that I need to do is basically export my map as a video. If you're a Flourish user, you might be aware that we have a image download option, which basically allows you to download any chart as a static image, so PNG, JPEG, or an SVG. Unfortunately, we still don't have the option to export things as video. But believe it or not, actually just making a screen recording of the Flourish map on my laptop is a very clear and straightforward way for me to kind of like go around this for the time being. So this is exactly what I'll be doing. So one thing that it's quite important to know, however, is that obviously we need charts for social media in a specific aspect ratio. Now here, because I have done this before and I already know how much width and height this will take from the original square post that we will be making. I know that an ideal kind of like aspect ratio for this will be 900 by 715 pixels, for example. So this gives me kind of like plenty of space for me to make a very big and very decent screen recording of the visualization. And you'll see why I'm not making a full square in just a second. But just to be on the safe side, basically, I always like to increase things. If I know that the width and height I need is 945 by 715, I always increase the size of the visualizations by 5 more pixels or so, just so then when I actually make the screen recording, I am sure that I'm not going out of I'm not taking any additional elements in the screen recording. And on a MacBook, basically the way we do screen recording is by holding Shift, Command, and 5, which, as you can see now, kind of gives me this format where I can make sure that I am recording is exactly what I need to record. However, to avoid any technical difficulties for the time being, because it has happened and it's scary, I have already made a screen recording of the video that I was just showing you right now, which is this file, Leaves 2023. And as you can see, once I screen record my visualization, that's the reason why we also left kind of the button at the very top, so I can actually play and post the recording as I'm screen recording. We have this kind of animation. That's an MOV file because this is the default size, the default thing that the MacBook exports. And this is it. This is all we need. So now that we have already this file, the last thing I do is I'm going to go to a new Canva file, which we'll be using for today's demo. If you're not familiar with Canva at all, please give us a shout in the chat. And just because I'm also aware of time, maybe at the end of the webinar, we can have a little bit of an overview of Canva and how Canva works as well. But essentially, this is the original design. This is something that many of you who have used Canva are familiar with. So basically, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to uploads. I'm going to upload files. I'm going to go to my folder, upload this that I've just made. And here it is. It's loading. I can already import it in my file. Now, here with the dimensions that I use, which were again like 940 by 720 or so, I see that this fits the width quite well, perfectly, but it also gives us a bit of breathing space that Annie will later on utilize in her demo. So that's me. My job here is done because I am not the one creating social media posts. Annie is. So from the perspective of Flourish, this is basically all we need to do in order to ensure that she has the kind of like the foundation of what is then going to be a social media post. And that's that. This is the first part of the demo, or essentially how we create animated charts. And you will be quite happy to know that for static visuals, things are actually much easier. Back to the Taylor Swift charts that we showcased a bit earlier. This is our scrolly in C2. You can actually read the blog post as well if you're interested. But you can see here how this scrolly telling kind of like evolves. As I'm scrolling, more captions appear. You have really cool transitions between templates and so on. But of course, if I just take a screen recording of that, even if I want an animated chart and just upload it on Instagram, I don't think it's going to have the same kind of like impact as if we actually tweak it just a little bit. So if we open the underlying visualization of our scrolly, this is another kind of like function of Flourish. Basically, you have two options to create kind of like data stories with more than one slide. One of them is a traditional presentation kind of thing. The other one is a scrolly available on our premium accounts. So if you see here, basically, this is kind of like how the scrolly looks like in Flourish. What I'll do here is I'm going to go to the underlying visualization that powers this scrolly. So this is here, current slide, like so. And here is our set list. That's the visualization. Now, here I'll actually make a duplicate again, just in case. Always make a duplicate of charts. I'm going to actually get rid of copy off, like that. And because this is a static image, I don't have to create a video. I don't have to do anything. All I need to do is prep the chart in exactly the same manner that we did for the map, which means essentially getting rid of every single thing that we are not going to be using or it's not clickable on social media, which again includes the filter. So here under visibility, I'll just hide the filter, so to never show. Then I'm actually very quickly going to get rid of the header and subtitle, like that. And here is our footer as well. So I'm just going to get rid of that as well. You can see that you have multiple sources options, just deleting everything, and that's it. This is our visualization. Looks fantastic, looks great, perfect. Now, because again, we're creating a static visualization, I can always download the image, again, like by tweaking the custom dimensions. If I need it as a square, if I need anything else, it doesn't matter. However, there is an even better option for when it comes to static charts. And this is the way that we ensure that Annie has the biggest flexibility ever when she creates social media posts. And this is utilizing shared folders in Flourish. So if I go back to my projects here, you will see, again, the interface in Flourish. So basically, if this is the first time you're seeing, because I'm part of a company or a team kind of thing, you will see that here I have all of my projects. So these are all the folders that I have been working on, etc., etc. But we also have Flourish projects, which are shared folders, which allows us to like kind of share and edit visualizations within a team. So for example, here there is a folder, 2025 webinar, that Annie and I have created. And all I need to do for Annie to be able to see my visualization later on, and you'll see why in a second, is literally just drag and drop my chart in the shared folder. And if you open it, you will see here that we have like some visualizations that are already within the shared folder. That's obviously the Taylor Swift and the map that we have just created. And just to showcase one more thing, is here under my visualization, I can always choose whether other members of my company can edit my visualization, whether they can only view it and without being able to tweak anything, or if only I can view it, which obviously makes zero sense if I put something on a shared folder. But yeah, these are how our sharing permissions actually work. And again, this is if you're part of a company. All of this while we're doing it is so that we can allow the Canva and Flourish integration to work together. Annie will be showing this in a second, but just an emphasis that if you do not belong in a company, if you're not part of any kind of like organization in Flourish, all of those things, every single thing that you have in your own personal profile will also be available in Canva and your Canva account once you link both tools. But just because Annie and I, I created the chart and she needs to tweak it, etc. This is why we are using shared folders. And I think that's it. I think my job in Flourish is done. Basically, the only thing we need to do is continue tweaking the things and actually making them look nice in Canva.
Now, we are running a little bit tight on time, so I'm going to try and go quite quickly. Let me know if you need me to slow down. But again, if you can't stick around till the end, we will send this through as a screen recording in your email. So I'll finish the demo, and then, yeah, if you can't stick around, we'll send that through to you. But here we are. I'm in a shared Canva file with Simona. So I have this screen recording that she just made with you guys. But what are we going to do to make this social suitable? Well, I think first of all, we actually want the background of the document to match the chart. So to change the background in Canva, you're just going to go up here to where it says background color. And we're just going to choose a new color for this. Oftentimes your document colors will pop up here, but you can also click add a new color and get the dropper and then just select the color like that. So that is looking good already. And if you're having any issues with seeing the screen, just make sure that you've clicked on the little tab that says screen sharing. But now what we are going to do next is we're actually going to add a title so that we have a little bit of storytelling. I'm going to do that by going up here into text. And because we have a team account on Canva, we've got all of our branding here. So it's super easy and accessible. But otherwise, you can just search for a font or just add a text box. But I'm just going to click the heading option here, which will bring a text box up for me. And then I'm going to add my title in, which is, and the leaves that are green turn to brown. But that is absolutely huge and not quite social suitable. But you might be wondering why I've decided to add the title in Canva, and it is purely so I have a little bit more flexibility than I would in Flourish. I can literally put this wherever I want. I could have it down here if I was feeling wacky and wild, but I'm not. So I'm going to pop this up here, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And a little trick I have for actually making sure I'm happy with how I have my spacing is to use the rulers in Canva. So you can turn these on. I've actually got them on at the moment, but you can turn these on by pressing Shift and R, and that will bring these up. And then you just drag down, and I want mine there. I want this little square here on the edge, and then I'm going to put one to the edge of this map because that will help me to balance things out. And then I'm also going to put one again here at the end of that square. And then finally, I want my source to be a bit lower down. So I'm going to put my ruler for that about 1,000. These aren't precise numbers. Obviously, I'm trying to rush through it a little bit, so I'm not being super precise. But this is sort of what I do when I'm creating a post to help me make my sizing work best. So there we go. We've got our rulers. We've got our title. In our branding, we like to have things left aligned. So I'm just going to push that to the side. But then I think we can add a little bit more fun here. We can add a visual clue. So I'm actually going to add an emoji in here. And to do that on my Mac, I just press Control, Command, and Space. And that brings up my emoji keyboard. And then, I'm going to search for leaves and I'm going to spell them correctly. And there we go. We've got a fun little leaf in there. Now we just need to add the rest of our chart necessities. So we need to add our source. So again, I'm going to go to text. I'm going to choose subheading this time. It's still a little bit big, but that's okay. And then I'm going to add my source. I'll copy and paste that in here. We got it from smokymountains.com. I'm going to make source bold just so it's a bit different. And then I'm going to take the sizing down to 18. And then I'm going to pop that there in that bottom corner in that little space I made with the rulers. Now, as Simona said earlier, it's really important to have um, context in your stories. So we often do that with subtitles. Now, for this post, where we've got the times and the dates at the top, having a subtitle might make it feel a little bit cluttered. And actually, the information we want to give isn't super necessary to understand the story at first glance. So I'm going to add some additional context here at the bottom for those who need it. So for us, it's that this is the 2023 fall foliage predictions. And then finally, I'm going to add in our logo, which a couple of you pointed out that all of ours have that. I've actually added that in here in Canva. It is also available in Flourish. But again, this is part of us being a team in Canva, that our logo is just available for us here in the branding section. Now I'm going to change the color of that to make it stand out. And I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. And I'm going to pop that here so that it matches with the edge of my map to make things feel balanced. Now here, I'm going to turn my rulers off again. So I've just pressed Shift R, and I'm just going to adjust this map so that it feels like it fits right. This looks good to me, but I think there's one more thing we're missing for context, which is that I think we need a legend. Simona removed the legend earlier because it wasn't really telling us anything, but we can create a custom legend in Canva now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to elements, and I have shapes here because I use them a lot, but if you don't see them straight away, you can just search shapes and then they'll pop up here. And I'm just going to choose a square. And then to shrink my square down and have it hold its shape, I'm going to hold down Shift as I shrink it down. And I think that'll be a good size. So I'm going to line this up with my source. So I'm going to press Shift R to bring my rulers back. And you can see why I needed them because I didn't match that up well with my eyes. Then we're going to add some text. Now this one, the green, is going to represent no change. So I'm going to shrink that down to maybe size 16 and pop that there. And then here, I'm going to change the color of my little square that I've added. And I'm just going to use the color picking tool again to add that. So that is what I've done to add that. But I'm not going to run you through me doing that for everything. So here's some assets I created earlier. I'm just going to do Control C to bring them over, and then Control V to paste them across. And then that is us. That is it done. What we need to do now is just press the share button up here, press the download button. It's going to suggest an MP4 video, which is perfect. You can increase the size here to improve the quality, and then just make sure you've only got the page you needed. And then that is going to download. And I'm going to leave it as that for now because it's going to take a few moments to download. And we're going to hop into creating a static chart. So Simona created for me the Taylor Swift socials and she dropped them into a folder. And that is really, really useful because now I'm going to be able to pull that through directly into Canva because we actually have a Flourish app in Canva. So to open the Flourish app, if you've never used it before, you just go here to your apps. And oh, I searched it earlier, but all you need to do is search for Flourish. And then you click this little icon and that will bring you through to the Flourish app. Now, because Simona's chart that she made is in a shared folder, I'm going to need to search for it. But I'm just going to press paste in what she named it, and hopefully it shall appear. So yeah, here we go. We have the chart. I just click it, and then it pulls it straight through into Canva, which is super, super helpful. And that means that you can sort of dynamically change the sizing of this, and it will respond, which is great for when you're trying to create a social post, because you want to be able to wiggle the sizing about as much as possible. But again, we're going to make use of a few different visual clues here. So I'm going to do titles, subtitles, add a few boldings, add some highlights, add some annotations, and add some arrows, and also another note. So I'm first of all actually going to change the background color again to match the chart. So it's just on a black background. And then I've already got my rulers here, so I'm just going to leave them here for time. And then I'm going to add my title. So I go into text, I go into heading, and then my title is going to be the anatomy of a record-breaking tour. So I'm just going to copy and paste that, make it left aligned, and also shrink the size down again, so down to 30. Now I'm just going to move this up to my ruler so it's in the correct position. And now I want to add my subtitles. So again, I'm going to pull in my subheading and I'm just going to copy and paste my subheading in. And again, I'm going to make that down to size 19. That's looking a bit better. Left aligned. And then I don't want it to go across 3 lines. So I'm just going to drag it over a little bit. Now the spacing here, let me turn off the ruler so you can see, that's looking a little bit tight for me. I think it's a bit claustrophobic. So I'm gonna space these out a little bit more. And a handy trick that I like to use to see my spacing is to hold down Option when you're looking at a chart, and then that will help you see here, this little number, that's how much space there is between the charts, between the text. So I'm gonna take that down to 12, and that will work with any element. And then what else can we do? I want to add some bolding. This chart's about Taylor Swift, so let's draw attention to that with a bit of bolding in the text there. And yeah, the chart's sitting in an okay space, but you could just wiggle it around or change the sizing if you want to, but I think that's looking okay for now. And then we're gonna add a source in. I'm just gonna copy this in from the other page. And then you can just change the text color up here. And my source for this is Taylor R package. And then I'm just going to pop in a little note as well about the fact that this is Taylor Swift's discography split by album. And I've accidentally made this bold, but to make things bold or not bold, you can either click up here or you can press Command B as a keyboard shortcut, and that will help you out. And yeah, let's just adjust that again to match our rulers. Although this is looking a little bit big, we still want to pop our logo in. So I'm going to decrease the font size just a couple. And then pop in the Flourish logo again. Got to have that branding in there. And now one last thing I want to do is just add in some annotations because this isn't really telling us a story yet. So I love doing custom annotations in Canva because you can do some crazy stuff that isn't yet possible in Flourish. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to pop the text in for our annotation. So I'm going to copy and paste that across. As I said earlier, we're drawing attention to something that changed during the tour as our story. So that was the fact that she released the Tortured Poets Department album. So I'm going to shrink the size of this annotation and I'm going to make it left aligned as well. And then we're just going to move it into where I want it to go. But here you can see with all this text at the top, it's feeling a bit cluttered. We need to add something in there that will sort of help break it up a little bit. So I'm actually going to use a highlight to do that and also add some more storytelling connotations by linking it with the color of the album. So to do that again, I'm going to go into my elements and I'm going to add a shape. And then I'm just going to wiggle this down to make it into a highlight. And I'm going to be quite rough with this so that it's quite quick because I know we are running over time. But I've just added that. And then to duplicate it, I'm going to press Command D. Oh, there we go. And then as you can see here, it's gone over the top of the layer. We don't want that. So you can just click the position icon here and you can either just press the backward button or here you can actually manipulate the layers. But there we go. So this is actually the wrong color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight just the Tortured Poets Department text and change the text color to black. And then I'm going to select both of these annotations, change the color, and I'm just going to drag that color from the Tortured Poets Department. And there we have it. It is matching the color of the album. And then finally, the last step I'm going to do is I'm just going to add an arrow. So I'm going to search for an arrow and pick one out, and then I want my arrow to be curved. So to do that, you just click here, choose line type, and then choose curved. And then I'm just going to hold down Command as I move it, and that will help me have a bit more flexibility. And there we go, I've just adjusted that sizing, and I'm going to adjust the line style as well. I want it to only be 2. Okay, so there we have it. I've just added that annotation. And for the final thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to duplicate across another annotation that I prepared earlier. And I'm going to show you one last little trick that I did in Canva that isn't possible in Flourish, which is I just added another little arrow, again, a curved arrow. And I did this to show that the albums of Folklore and Evermore, they actually came out in the same year, they're sister albums. So I added in my arrow, I made it curved, I'm reducing the size again, and I actually added two little endpoints onto the arrow, just a little design choice. And that helped me to show that these two albums sort of belong together with a little bit of a visual clue. And then, yeah, I'm just going to wiggle this around so there's got a bit more space. And there we go. That is my chart. I think that is everything done. Sorry, I rushed through that a little bit because we are over time, but all you need to do now is press share, press download, and then I'm going to switch this back over to PNG. Just increase the size if you want it to be higher quality. I like to download it at 2 times size. And then I'm going to deselect that one. And then I'm just going to download it. This one should be a little quicker than last time, so hopefully I can show you it once it downloads. But that is everything. Okay, here we go. Let's see if it will download in time. It's getting there. But that is everything I'm doing to the chart. So it's super simple, super quick in Canva. Obviously, I knew what I was doing. I'd already decided my story, but it was very simple. And let me just, oh, okay, right. It's not going to show you, but if I just go across, this is just how it will come through for you. Okay, so let me just dive back into our presentation for a quick wrap up before the end. So again, just a little reminder to keep things simple. Before you leave the house, look in the mirror and remove one accessory. I like to live by it with the social posts. Yeah. And then just some quick design top tips. I said it a few times, but give your chart room to breathe. It just helps things feel a bit more sleek and just actually lets you show things off really well. Try and use a consistent style, especially within one post. Try and keep it consistent throughout. Otherwise, it just gets a bit overwhelming and confusing. Make sure you leverage color strategically. So, whether this is in your branding, in your social posts, or like I was doing for the storytelling with the Taylor Swift post, where I was using the color to call out specific albums, try and use that as strategically as possible. And also, we didn't run through it today, but make sure you check your accessibility on your post, as that is super duper important in creating a good chart for social media. And then finally, what is new in Flourish? Well, excitingly, we have a new download data function. So you can now add a link to your chart that allows your readers to download the data that powers your visualization. You can drop this into your footer in Flourish, and you can check out more about that in the link in the slides, which we will send you by the end of the week. Thank you so much for joining the session. If you have any questions we didn't have a chance to get to, you can reach out to us at flourish-webinar@canva.com. Use that email address if you have any issues with the survey, please. Will be the best email for that. And then if you have any sort of more generic questions, please reach out to us at hello@flourish.studio. And finally, I can't do a social media webinar without plugging our socials. So make sure you give us a follow on X, on Instagram, where our handle is @madewithflourish, and on LinkedIn as well. I hope to see you guys on there. And thank you so much for joining. You've been amazing, and I hope to see you guys next time.